Welcome to Sleepy Classic Tales. Tonight, we travel together into the world of one of the most important German novels ever written, Buddenbrooks, published in 1901 and written by Thomas Mann. The story is set in the 19th century in the old merchant city of Lübeck and follows the life and gradual transformation of a wealthy trading family. This is our own calm and gently narrated short version. In a quiet street of the old Hanseatic city of Lübeck around the year 1840 stands a large house. It is not a palace, not a castle, and yet one feels immediately upon entering that the people who live here are deeply aware of their own importance. This is the house of the Buddenbrooks, a family that has been involved in trade for generations, that knows prosperity, enjoys respect, and sees itself as a fixed and natural part of the city. The house has been newly furnished. The furniture is carefully chosen, the rooms spacious and bright. Everything appears orderly, deliberate, almost self-evidently well arranged. On this day, guests have been invited, not to celebrate, but to demonstrate, to show that the Buddenbrook family has arrived, that it knows its place and holds it firmly. At the center sits Johann Buddenbrook, the head of the family, a man with a calm voice, a clear gaze, and an unshakable belief that order and duty are the foundations of a good life. Beside him sits his wife. She listens attentively, speaks little, but her presence is unmistakable. She knows the rules of this house as well as he does, and she carries them with him. The next generation is also present. There is the son, already involved in the business, serious, diligent, ready to take on responsibility. And there is the daughter, still young, observant, more attentive to people than to numbers and contracts. As the guests are led through the rooms, conversation turns to trade, to old connections, to reliability and the good reputation of the Buddenbrook name. Everything sounds calm, confident, stable. And yet, anyone who listens closely can already sense something else. Not unrest, but tension. Because behind the ease with which success is discussed lies an unspoken demand that everything should remain as it is, that the next generation should not merely inherit, but continue, that this house, this name, this order should never be questioned. The Buddenbrooks firmly believe that life is predictable if one works diligently enough and follows the rules. On this day, the world seems to confirm that belief. No one suspects that this very conviction will one day demand more of them than any single loss ever could. For now, everything is calm. The house stands firm. The name carries weight. And so ends this first glimpse into a family that considers itself stable and is therefore especially vulnerable. Life in the Buddenbrook household follows a fixed rhythm. Days begin early, structured, without haste but also without flexibility. Breakfast is taken together, business matters discussed, appointments reviewed, tasks assigned. Work here is not a necessary burden, it is a given. More than that, it is a measure of worth. The son grows into this way of thinking long before he questions it. From an early age, he is introduced to numbers, contracts, conversations with business partners. He is taught how crucial reliability is, how decisive reputation can be, and how little space there is for doubt. He listens, he learns, he tries. But not everything comes easily to him. Sometimes his seriousness appears strained, as if he must constantly reassure himself that this path truly belongs to him. His sister is different. She moves more lightly through the house, senses moods, observes guests, remembers words, glances, undertones. While business is discussed at the table, she wonders why certain conversations fall silent so quickly when specific topics arise, why some decisions are never explained, only assumed. She senses early on that this house is not sustained by order alone, but also by expectations that are never spoken because they are considered self-evident. The mother knows these unspoken rules as well. She has learned to accept them, sometimes soften them, sometimes carry them. She knows that a family name offers protection, but also binds, that prosperity reassures and, at the same time, obliges. The Buddenbrooks business continues to do well. They trade in grain, in goods, in trust. Yet behind the facade of order, the first small cracks begin to appear. Not as crisis, not as loss, but as quiet unease. A business partner hesitates longer than before. A deal requires more discussion. An old contact feels suddenly distant. None of this is threatening, not yet. But it is enough to reveal that success is not a state, but a balance that must constantly be maintained. In the evenings, as the house grows quieter, each retreats in their own way. The son studies documents, checks figures, plans ahead. The daughter reads or gazes out of the window at the street below, at people who do not measure every step by reputation. Somewhere between these two attitudes lies a question no one voices. What happens when duty and personal feeling no longer want the same thing? For now, this question remains quiet, almost invisible. But it is there, and it will remain. Over the years, the Buddenbrook house changes very little. The furniture remains in the same places. Routines stay familiar. Conversations follow known paths. And yet, something decisive happens. Time begins quietly doing its work. The son moves deeper into the business, not suddenly, not through a single defining moment, but step by step. A conversation here, a decision there, a responsibility transferred as if it were only natural. He accepts it. He knows it is expected of him. And he also knows that refusal in this family is never spoken openly. It would only be seen as weakness. He tries to adopt his father's tone, factual, controlled, calm, but sometimes a hesitation betrays that he is thinking more than before, that he has questions he does not ask. Business continues. Not brilliant, but solid. Money is earned, money is lost, balances are restored. Everything appears stable, yet the world outside is changing faster than the house in Lübeck. New trade routes emerge, new competitors appear, markets react more unpredictably. The old rules still work, but no longer effortlessly. During this time, the daughter grows up. She is now old enough to fully understand conversations and young enough to question them inwardly. She notices how rarely wishes are discussed here, how little space emotions occupy, and how quickly everything impractical is dismissed as secondary. Marriage is discussed, not as romance, but as connection, as structure, as something that fits or does not fit. She listens. She smiles politely. But inwardly she senses that her view of life does not fully align with that of the house. The mother also feels something shifting. She sees how her son grows more serious, how lightness disappears without anyone missing it. She sees her daughter withdraw, observe more, live increasingly within herself. No open conflict arises between the generations. The family is too disciplined for that. Instead, distance forms. Quiet, polite, barely visible. The house remains a place of order, but order no longer absorbs everything. In the evenings when they sit together, it is quieter than before. Not unpleasant, but denser. Conversations end sooner. Thoughts remain unspoken. And somewhere in this silence lies an unformulated realization that success costs not only work, but adaptation. And not everyone is willing to pay the same price. For now, the Buddenbrook name still carries weight. Everything still appears solid, but time has begun to ask questions, and it will not wait for answers. Over time, the house grows quieter. Not all at once, not through a single event, but through many small changes that are difficult to name. Johann Buddenbrook, the patriarch, is no longer as present as before. He still sits at the table, still takes part in conversations, but his voice has grown softer. Not weak, but cautious. He listens more than he speaks. The business demands him, not because it fails, but because it requires constant attention. And he senses that this vigilance is no longer self-evident. The son takes on more and more responsibility, officially, correctly, without ceremony. It is the transition everyone expected, and yet it feels different than imagined. Because responsibility brings not only authority, but solitude. He realizes that decisions grow heavier when no one stands above him, that doubts do not vanish simply because they are hidden. And while he strives to fill the role, something within him begins to tire. Not his will, but his joy. In the house, this is rarely discussed. One speaks less in general. Instead, things are organized, ordered, planned. The daughter withdraws further. She fulfills what is expected of her, yet her thoughts are often elsewhere. She feels foreign within the ease with which life paths are determined here. She senses that people listen to her, but only to a point. That understanding is offered only as long as it changes nothing. Then something happens that cannot be planned. A loss. Not dramatic, not loud, one that announces itself slowly and yet strikes unprepared. The father falls ill. At first, it is called fatigue, exhaustion. One reassures oneself, as always. But the illness remains. It takes space. It changes daily life. Suddenly, the house is no longer only a place of order, but also of concern. Visits grow quieter, conversations shorter, gazes more cautious. When death finally comes, it is not shocking, but final. Forms are observed, matters are settled, words are spoken with dignity and restraint. And yet this farewell leaves something behind that cannot be closed. A gap that affects not only a person, but an entire structure. After the funeral, they return to the house. The furniture remains, routines function, but something is missing. The son feels it most strongly. For the first time, he senses that inheritance is not only obligation, but burden. The daughter realizes that security is more fragile than she ever thought. And the mother, who holds everything together, suddenly knows that her strength is not limitless. The house still stands. The name still carries weight. The business continues. But the idea that everything might remain as it was has disappeared. And with it, a part of the certainty on which the Buddenbrooks' life had rested for so long. After the father's death, the house changes perceptibly. Not immediately, not dramatically, but permanently. There is no longer anyone who makes decisions as a matter of course. No one whose word goes unquestioned, even when one might privately think otherwise. The son now stands at the top, officially, finally. He has prepared for this moment for a long time, and yet nothing about it feels as he expected. Because responsibility is different when it can no longer be shared. Before, there was someone who absorbed doubt, cushioned mistakes, remained in the background yet was always there. Now that voice has fallen silent. The son works more than ever. He starts earlier, finishes later, checks numbers repeatedly, asks questions, deliberates longer. Not from insecurity, but from the knowledge that there is no second attempt. Business continues. Some deals even succeed, but they feel heavier. Every decision now carries its own weight. The city reacts as well. People meet him with respect, but no longer with ease. They examine more closely, listen more carefully. The name Buddenbrooks still opens doors, but no longer automatically. Within the house, old routines are maintained. Meals take place, conversations remain polite, but something has shifted. The mother has grown tired. Not weak, but quieter. She carries her grief without speaking much of it and holds together what can still be held. The daughter observes all of this. She sees how her brother changes, grows more serious, more closed, more tightly bound to the role expected of him. She recognizes that life in this house leaves no space for deviation. For the first time, she asks herself the question she had long suppressed. What if this path is not hers? Quietly, a longing for something else grows within her, for a life not defined solely by a name. Yet for now, she remains. She conforms. She makes no demands. The Buddenbrook family continues. It functions. It works. It maintains form. But the ease with which one once believed in the future has vanished. In its place is a quiet tension. Everyone senses now that what once seemed self-evident must be asserted anew every day. And not everyone will be able to carry this burden indefinitely. Over time, it becomes clear that responsibility demands not only strength, but distance. The son now lives almost entirely within the realm of work, not only physically, but inwardly. His thoughts revolve around numbers, appointments, risks once shared by others. He speaks little of it. Not out of secrecy, but because he has learned that doubt does not invite dialogue, only questions. And questions he wants to avoid. The mother sees this change. She recognizes it without comment. She has learned that some developments cannot be stopped, only accompanied. The daughter senses the change even more strongly. Between her and her brother lies now more than silence. It is a different way of life. He speaks of responsibility. She thinks of freedom. He plans the future in numbers. She wonders how a life should feel. When they sit together at the table, conversation is polite but cautious. Topics are avoided that might open too much, because both know that once inner changes are spoken aloud, there is no going back. Business continues to demand its price, not in catastrophes but in small concessions. One agrees more quickly. One yields here. One accepts risks there. None of it seems dramatic, yet each detail shifts the balance slightly. The son notices that he decides more often alone, that he feels less support, and that recognition offers less security than former trust. The daughter begins to detach inwardly. She continues to fulfill expectations, but no longer sees her life as fixed. Thoughts of a different existence grow more concrete, not as escape, but as possibility. She wonders whether one can live a fulfilled life without fully conforming to the expectations of a name. And for the first time, this question appears not as threat, but as hope. The house still stands, the family still exists, the name still carries weight. But the bond that once held everything together has grown thinner. Not broken, but strained. And everyone senses that the longer it is stretched, the more likely it is to give way. The daughter's decision does not come suddenly. It matures over a long time, quietly, between conversations, expectations, unspoken demands. When she finally speaks it, it sounds almost factual. She wants to leave. Not out of defiance, not out of rebellion, but because she has realized that her life in this house will never fully be her own. The mother listens. She does not contradict immediately, perhaps because she has long sensed this moment would come, perhaps because she knows that people cannot be held by binding them. The son reacts differently. Not harshly, not loudly, but visibly hurt. For him, this decision is not a personal wish, but a rupture, a sign that the order he works to maintain is no longer carried as self-evidently as before. He tries to argue, speaks of responsibility, cohesion, what one owes the family. But his words no longer reach her. She has listened too long, remained silent too long. She leaves the house, not hastily, not secretly, but openly, with packed thoughts and a quiet farewell. Shortly afterward, the business comes under stronger pressure as well. A risky deal, seemingly necessary, fails to bring balance. Another transaction is delayed. Payments do not arrive. Nothing is lost yet, but for the first time, the word loss enters the room not merely as possibility. The son works against it. He attempts to compensate through discipline and control what threatens to slip away. Yet the more he fights, the clearer it becomes that some developments cannot be reversed. The city observes more closely. The Buddenbrooks name is still respected, but now examined more carefully. Questions are asked more often, securities demanded that were once waived. The house feels larger than before. Not because it has grown, but because fewer people fill it with life. In the evenings, the son often sits alone, with numbers, with decisions, with the sense that everything he does merely buys time. And within this knowledge lies his greatest exhaustion, because for the first time, he suspects that duty alone is not enough to preserve something that has already begun to dissolve inwardly. In the end, it is not a single event that brings everything to a close, no great collapse, no loud scandal. It is rather a gradual weakening. The business continues but no longer sustains. It demands more than it gives. The son endures. He fulfills his duties, checks, decides, orders. But the certainty that all this effort leads to something lasting has vanished. What was once self-evident must now be constantly defended, and even then it remains uncertain. The mother grows ever quieter, not from resignation but from understanding. She recognizes that some developments cannot be stopped without losing everything else. The house is still there, the rooms unchanged. The furniture stands as it always did, yet it has no future anymore. Only a past. The son walks through these rooms as if searching for support somewhere. But even the most familiar places give no answers. The daughter is gone, and with her, a possibility that was never truly allowed. Not because it was lacking, but because it could not be held without denying oneself. In the end, the name remains. It still stands in the books. It still sounds familiar. But it no longer carries. Not because it has lost value, but because no one remains who can carry it forward with the same self-evidence. There is no dramatic downfall. The house still stands. The name still exists. The business continues. And yet something has been lost that cannot be replaced. Not wealth, not reputation, but the inner belief that all of this still has a future. The Buddenbrooks do not fail loudly. They lose themselves quietly. And perhaps this is the true story of this family. That was our calm, short version of Buddenbrooks by Thomas Mann. Perhaps you wondered how much our short version differs from the original novel, why the children experience inheritance not as privilege but as burden, and how much of Thomas Mann's own background and inner conflict are reflected in this story. We explore these and many other questions in our companion book, Golden Pages, Volume 1. The link can be found in the description. Good night, and if you like, we will listen to each other again tomorrow.